it's been a few days since Volume 2 of Stranger Things 5 came out, and I've had some time to marinate on it and see sort of the response to episodes 5, 6, and 7. And I'm going to do a review of those episodes. We got a lot of answers about the Upside Down and a few answers about Vecna. I was wrong about what sort of happened in that cave. I guess that was just a point that reminds him, I guess, of what happened near that cave, which was Vecna killed a guy when he was very young, and then the guy has a briefcase, and in that briefcase out comes smoke. We also see Holly puke out that smoke, similar to what Will in season 2 spewed out. That was like the mind flare stuff. So we can kind of deduce that that's how Vecna got his power somewhat, was he gets infected by the mind flare at that point before he ever goes to the abyss, is what they're calling it. So there's some major plot holes that remain in this season, and the response has been quite negative. A lot of people are calling this the worst season and pointing to scenes like Jonathan and Nancy's sort of breakup, which to me is not a breakup. Very clearly, well, not very clearly not a breakup, but if you listen to the words that they're saying, you can tell that they're not actually breaking up, but they're saying we're going to continue to date after all of this, but we're going to need our space. Like, we don't need to be madly in love, getting married right away. So the problem with that, though, is that it came at the wrong time. We've gotten zero development with Nancy and Jonathan as a couple since like season 2. So we're going on 3 seasons of getting like nothing of them in terms of development of their like relationship and their lives, really. So to get it after 3 seasons is just kind of jarring. Like, it's necessary to give that sort of thing a conclusion, but there was no reason for it to happen here. It should have happened early to mid season 4. Just have them simply have a phone call and say, like, hey, this like long distance thing, it's kind of complicated. Like, I could have gone to you on like spring break with you, but I chose not to. I feel like when that happened in season 4, that should have been when it like was resolved. They just extended it out of just sort of, I guess, non-fluid writing. They just didn't know when they were going to conclude it. They just figured, oh, we'll get to that in a later season. And when you do that, you put yourself in this scenario where you have these unresolved plot lines that you probably want to have resolved before your final episode. So that's why this episode, particularly episode 7, was so not well received, was because that development sort of needed to happen, and it makes sense to have it not happen in the last episode, but it doesn't make sense to have it in the second to last episode. It's just really stupid timing, and to have this whole like reestablishing the love triangle of Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve just felt so unnecessary. It was just this weird like plot device to not give them development as a couple, and it's just entirely unnecessary. Like, wholly uninteresting and dumb, and like, I would have, at the very least, at the latest, I would have had Nancy talking to Jonathan, I don't know, when they were at the freaking radio station at the start of season 5, instead of having a scene where, like, oh, Steve and Jonathan are going to compete by racing to the top of this tower. There's no reason for that scene to exist. It's stupid for Jonathan to be as jealous as he is, as just like Jonathan and Nancy have shared trauma, so do Steve and Nancy, and Steve and Robin, and Steve and Dustin, and Nancy and Dustin, and Nancy and Mike. You know, like, they're gonna be friends. Are you gonna not be friends where you know you all have a friend who has superpowers? No, multiple friends who have superpowers. Like, you're fighting the military. You're friends. They're friends. Like, why? It never felt like it fit Jonathan's character. It only ever fit season one Steve's character to be like a jealous, douchey boyfriend. I don't know. I just feel like they kind of butchered Jonathan's character over the last three seasons out of just not knowing what to do with Nancy and Jonathan. But I digress. The another major point is the upside down. It being a wormhole is so stupid. These walls would have had to have always existed there then. How come the several times that Hopper's been in the upside down? At this point in the story, he's been there about 40 times separately to the upside down. He's never seen these walls. Jonathan, Nancy, Steve, Dustin, Eddie, freaking Robin, 11 many times. Will have all been to the upside down. And they've never seen these walls. Even Joyce. Now, granted, Joyce was there like once, but they never saw these giant walls. Oh my god. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, alright, maybe Will, season one, he's in the upside down, he's scared, he's gonna stick around his house, kinda, sort of. Fine. But Hopper? Come on, dude. Come on. Especially when they were working with the lab in, like, season two. At no point in the military's many ventures into the upside down in the events of season one, season two, and beforehand, they never once encountered these walls. What the hell is that? That's not possible. That doesn't make any sense. Oh my god. It's very glaring, these plot holes, and just mind-boggling. And this whole plan that Steve has, it's not the worst plan. It's probably safer than like flying a helicopter. But like, was that what the military was trying to do? Was fly helicopters up to the other dimension? I don't know. Another big problem though with the military ultimately comes down to Kali, the 8, as she's known, 11's sister, the one that can like make you see things that aren't there. Oh my god, is she unbearable. People rightfully hate her even more than when she appeared in season 2. It's super obvious that she's going to turn on the group, and that is so stupid and illogical. Why would she even bother? She must be like entirely under the control of Vecna. But then why wouldn't... If that's the case, I feel like that has to be the case. Like, her character wouldn't be that stupid and weak. But that would mean she's part of the hive mind. So how is she around Will? I feel like she's going to be around Will prior to the final battle here, and he should be picking up on her being part of the hive mind. I just don't understand this character at all. Hopefully she dies a very painful death, because her character is just bad. So everything to do with her is just awful and forced, and her trying to get 11 to sort of suicide in the just stay with Vecna when they take out Vecna in the other dimension and just leave everyone she loves, her, like, you know, Hopper, who's basically her dad, and her boyfriend and all of her friends. We know 11's not gonna do that. Why would you even try to, like, have scenes where she's telling this to 11 and 11 is appearing like she's considering it? We're not buying it. Literally no one viewing this is buying it. Oh my god. And one of the other scenes that got a lot of criticism, beyond the weird we need space Jonathan and Nancy scene that should have happened last season was Will coming out. I feel like no one really liked this scene. It felt very absurd, considering that earlier in the season we got a scene where Will gets powers by basically accepting that he himself is gay. Now, it's fine having him come out, but again, it comes to the timing of it within the series. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. We've already gotten the scene of him accepting that he's gay. He also lives in 1980 small town America. The fact that this went so well and nobody had any questions is very bizarre and felt wrong, felt illogical, like that wouldn't really happen. And the scene just felt, it just was entirely unnecessary because we already got the, alright, he's gay, he accepts that he's gay, and you had like a really awesome scene there when that happened. And then you just have this very like mushy gushy scene that was like decently shot and acted, but why are we wasting time on this? There is further development we need or could use, like maybe Steve and Nancy having another conversation, Eleven and Mike having another conversation, Eleven and Hopper and Joyce. We still never got a real payoff, I feel like, on the Hopper and Joyce romance. Give us that. And give us, I don't even think we need a whole scene of what would logically happen, right? So Will, he has powers and he wants those powers to become stronger and to have a better sense of himself. You don't need him to come out to have that. What would make a lot more sense is him being like insecure about his powers as they're just now coming to exist, and him think, oh, holy crap, we're about to fight like the big bad here, possibly die. 11 over here has had powers almost her entire life. Like, she is a mean, lean, fighting machine here, and I'm this scaredy cat. Maybe I should ask my good friend 11 here to train me a little bit, to give me some practice. Like, hey, how do you do that? Your powers have increased dramatically from when, the boys first met you. How did you do that? And then you could, if you were a bad writer, have a scene similar to 8 helping 11 get better in tune with her powers. But not even that. That's if you're a bad writer. If you're a good writer, you have it just happening in the background of other characters talking. You have 2 characters talking, and then also a quick 10 seconds of 11 training Will, let's say outside, to do something with his powers, and she's just training him in some sort of way. And it's just like her giving him a quick bit of advice. They're training. We get that that's what's happening. And then boom, have Joyce and Hopper talking to each other. Because I don't know, they're those characters' parents. And they're in a relationship at this point that we've seen very little of, that we would love to see and have that developed. Right? Like, it's nice. It's nice to have Will coming out. It's a nice little scene. But it doesn't fit in the timeline of events, of viewing a show. And that's the problem with a lot of shows, is they do this crap, is they don't know when they're going to end. They don't know how many seasons they're going to get, obviously. So they never really planned any of this out. It seems like this series was thought of probably originally as a movie. The writers came up with an idea. All right, these kids play D&D. Their one friend goes missing. They stumble upon this girl who has superpowers and yada yada. And they start to build a story around that, build a world. And then they realize, oh, this might work better as several movies. And then eventually, oh, maybe this works better as a series. Boom. So, like, ideas kind of grow and expand and branch out in that sort of way. But because of the pacing of seasons and not knowing how many seasons you're going to get, it's really hard to balance all these different storylines. So it's not like the worst writing in the world. This isn't complete garbage, but this is clearly the worst season of the show. I think everyone has that right. And I think what people should be focusing on more than the Will coming out scene feeling very out of place is the Nancy and Jonathan conversation being out of place, specifically because it should have happened long ago. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, because we needed that development. Like, Jonathan's just been chudding around for 2 seasons here, and we haven't gotten any, like, payoff for that. So, there's that. Overall, I do think they did a lot of things right in sort of, like, building to this final battle, but they just didn't have enough of it. The thing with the kids that Vecna has, he's got these 12 kids that he is basically recreating the, like, MK Ultra experiments that got all of the other kids their powers, like 8 and 11 and so by doing some stuff in his, like, abyss dimension. Well, not his abyss dimension, but the abyss dimension. And they're all hooked up to these, like, spires, and he's presumably giving them all powers. The problem with that is we know these kids are going to be fine. You have 12 of these kids, and it genuinely feels like none of them have been developed enough for them to not make it out. So the entire, like, atmosphere you're trying to build of this being, like, a horrific nightmare scenario that all these children are in, it doesn't work, because we know every single one of those kids is gonna make it out. The only one that might not is Delightful Derek, and that would just really be stupid to get rid of him, as he's kind of the standout, probably best character of this season. So I don't like that aspect at all. It just feels forced. I don't know. Just so much time in this season has been just thrown in the trash. I wish the writing had been a lot stronger. It sucks that this has taken 3 years for us to get, and then we get it and the writing blows. I don't think this is as, like, slap in the face as something like the final season of Game of Thrones, or even as, just unnecessary and bland as something like the final season of Breaking Bad. I do think certain plot holes are never going to be talked about, like Russia. If Vecna's been in charge of the Demogorgons the whole time and they're just in Russia, why don't they just teleport out? Like, why would he allow that? That's just not how Demogorgons seem to work. Like, even if that portal being closed severs that tie, we never even got answers as to how those Russians even got the Demogorgons to Russia. Are we to assume that they transported, like, 8 Demogorgons from that underground base under Hawkins all the way to Russia? No. We're basically told that they were able to open a portal to the Upside Down in Russia. So, is that the same Upside Down as here? We can only presume that it's not. It's not Hawkins' Upside Down. It's seemingly a totally different wormhole, but also to the Abyss dimension. But what, are there other Demogorgons in that dimension that aren't a part of the hive mind, that aren't a part of Vecna? That would almost make sense, but regardless, is the portaling from the Upside Down to the real world is that an inherent part of the Demogorgon's powers, or does that only exist in the hive mind Demogorgons who are somehow enhanced by Vecna? We're not going to get answers to any of this. There's no way anything to do with Russia is ever going to be addressed. But just keep that in mind that Hopper, Joyce, and Murray fought off like 8 Demogorgons in Russia in season 3. And that's just a glaring plot hole that I'm sure will never be addressed. But I'm optimistic. I think there's gonna be some cool stuff. I hope that Max gets powers, that Holly officially gets powers. It would be the biggest like blue ball I've experienced in a while. But if they don't give Holly powers, the fact that Mike literally gave her her own D&D character and said, "Hey, this is the cleric. They cast protection spells on their friends and help create portals so their friends can escape to safety." If she doesn't do that, oh my god, will that be very annoying. And I think Max should have powers. I've been saying since like season 2, all right, you're got to give Will powers at some point. But ever since like Vecna targeted Max, I'm like, all right, Max, she's the Zoomer. She already has like a role. Like, do we even know what Dustin and Lucas play in D&D? Like, what their characters' roles even are? Like, yeah, Max's Zoomer role doesn't technically exist, but she made it exist, and she's fulfilled that role in real world dungeons, basically. So, and very literally a fantasy dungeon. She's in a like pocket dimension in a cave, and then goes to like a mine or something. So I think it's good. It's definitely not great. I think it's mid to good, somewhere in the mid to good range for sure. And yeah, it's okay. It's okay.